To put it bluntly, do the Republicans have a Trump problem?
There are some districts that probably it's best that he not go and visit.
The challenge for these incumbent Republicans is they're having to defend the indefensible.
The seats are gerrymandered now.
That's not a positive thing, is it? I mean, gerrymandering is that's a form of cheating, isn't it? Are you proud of cheating, Sarah?
It passed.
You've got an identity crisis in your party. You don't know whether your party is represented by Chuck Schumer or by Zoran Mamdani.
There's a generational wheel turning in our party, and then a new party's being born. I don't think we yet know what that party is going to look like.
Hello and welcome to Trumpworld. I'm Matt Frei in London, flying solo this week while Anushka enjoys a well-earned holiday. With less than 3 months until America's midterm elections, the battle for Congress is well underway. Republicans are fighting to hold on to the House and to the Senate. Democrats are trying to convince voters that they're ready to take both back. But there's a problem for Donald Trump. His poll numbers are slipping badly. Tariffs and the fallout from the Iran conflict, which he started at the end of February, are pushing up the cost of living. And for a president who promised to make Americans better off, the economy is becoming a very hard sell indeed. Here's how he defended his tariffs at a rally in Michigan.
Because I've done more for you than your parents, okay? Your parents are good. I'm not going to knock your parents, but I have been better to you than your parents.
Trust Donald Trump to deliver such a delicate message. Meanwhile, the Democrats have problems of their own. Internal divisions, questions over leadership, and growing concerns about whether they have the money and the message to capitalize on Trump's vulnerabilities. So, is Trump becoming a drag on Republican candidates, or are Democrats still struggling to make the most of the opportunity in front of them? Well, to talk through all of this, I'm joined now by Democratic political strategist Simon Rosenberg and Sarah Chamberlain, strategist and president of Republican Main Street Partnership. Welcome to you both. I'm going to ask you both the same question to kick off with. Everyone has always told me before midterm elections that they are by far the most important ever in the history of America. Is that the case this time?
This is extremely important for a couple different reasons. First of all, in order to complete President Trump's agenda, we'd absolutely need 2 more years to do that, and to block him from being impeached all the time and actually get something done. The concern is if the Democrats take over, all they're going to want to do is impeach, and they won't want to move the country's agenda forward.
Simon, most important midterm elections for you. Why?
Because we have to blunt and stop all the harm that Trump is doing to the country and to the American people and to our standing in the world. This has been, it is remarkable the amount of harm that he's done to the country. The country has repudiated him, rejected him. We just had new polling today that came out in the Economist YouGov poll. Trump was 34.62, his worst poll in that poll since, in either term. And so for us, the country needs a new direction, and we start that by winning this election this November. We feel good about it, but we've got, a few months to go here, but we're going to close strong, and I'm optimistic about what's going to happen in November.
Sarah, I see you're smiling valiantly. I mean, Trump's approval ratings are pretty rock bottom, aren't they? Would you advise him to be out there on the campaign trail, helping congressional candidates to win this election, or do you want to keep him well hidden away from view?
So we obviously acknowledge the fact that his polling could be better, but we need him out there in specific districts because he can still drive out that mega base. And we're going to need that. There are some districts that probably it's best that he not go and visit. The White House has started to admit to that. So we need him out there, but very selective districts. It's certainly going to be a tough November. We're not kidding ourselves on that one.
I remember covering the midterm elections in 2022, and I have to say, where Trump campaigned, on the whole, it went disastrously wrong. So, the Trump magic didn't work. He was more popular then than he is now. So does that create a bit of a problem for you?
It does. I mean, certainly when you have a president, no matter which party it is, it does not help your party in reelect. I mean, the history shows usually when the party in the White House, you lose seats in the midterms. However, the members that are the most endangered happen to be the members of the Republican Main Street Partnership, and they're ready. They're out there talking about issues that are important to their constituencies. And Trump will visit some of their districts, but the vast majority, he will not come into their districts. He understands that, and the White House understands that.
Right. So there is an understanding that he's actually potentially quite toxic on the campaign trail.
There is, and the White House has just recently, the last couple of days, admitted that there will be places he will not be going. I'd still rather be us than the Democrats. We have more money. There's a lot of reasons why, which I'm sure we'll get into. But we're ready for the fight. The members are ready, both the House and our senators.
Simon, do you care to respond?
Yeah, I think the challenge for these incumbent Republicans is they're having to defend the indefensible. They're going to have to defend raising prices through the tariffs. They're going to defend the war that is, raising prices and slowing the economy. They're going to have to defend the gutting of our healthcare system in the United States. They're going to have to defend giving ICE unlimited money without any reform as they're shooting people in the streets. Any one of these things would be hard for the Republicans to defend. They're going to have to defend all of them. And then if you add on top of that, they're greenlighting the corruption, the unprecedented corruption that we've seen from this administration. So I've been doing this a long time. This is my 17th electoral cycle in this work. And I don't know that any party that I've seen during that period has a tougher job to defend than what the Republicans have to defend, because the things that they've done have so clearly harmed the American people, and people are desperate for a new path. So it's why, if you look in the Senate races, we are competitive in Senate races where Trump won by 10, 13, 15 points, places like Alaska, Texas, Ohio, Iowa. It's extraordinary. And so, the country really is desperate for a new direction. They're giving us a shot, and we're going to do everything we can to take advantage of it this November.
They're also going to have to defend immigration, and that's something where Trump scores quite highly, isn't it?
Yeah, not anymore. And we have to distinguish between...
Why not anymore?
Well, so we have to distinguish between the border and immigration. On immigration, he's now minus 15, minus 18 in recent polls because DHS is killing people on the streets and murdering people on the streets. People don't like.
You're referring to the ICE
policy.
Agents and the
ICE agents, and this is we just had two more we just had two more in the last few weeks, right? And just including in Maine, which is where one of the most important Senate races are, and so the American people have really recoiled at the way that he's implemented the domestic immigration policies and the mass deportation policies. They're supportive of his effort to close the border. That's where he has support. On immigration, he no longer has support because of the outrageous, illegal, out of control ICE that we've seen and their murdering of people on the streets of America.
So that is a fair point, isn't it? They've overstepped the mark. Ordinary Americans who don't like the idea of illegal immigration do not like the idea. They hate the idea of American citizens being killed by ICE agents on the streets of cities like Minneapolis.
Absolutely. That has certainly been very unfortunate. But you've got Democrats who are running in New York, the candidate in Michigan, that are actually running to totally do away with police and ICE. So we're going to certainly, as Republicans, be using their rhetoric against them. Can ICE be changed? Absolutely. Can it be improved? Absolutely. But can it be done away with? Absolutely not. We are getting criminals off the streets. And the Democrats, the ones who are running for the socialists, the co-chair of the Democratic Socialist Party in America just yesterday said ICE should be eliminated, jails should be eliminated, police should be eliminated, Senate should be eliminated. So you've got some really radical Democrats.
Yeah, but that's not a representative opinion of of Democrat voters or politicians.
Well, it certainly is in New York. The Michigan fight, which I'm sure you're asking us about, is going to be fascinating. Everybody's talking about Maine, but if the Democrats get the socialist candidate in the state of Michigan, I think Mike Rogers has a very good chance of winning that Senate seat.
To put it bluntly, do the Republicans have a Trump problem? You cannot divest yourself from the man who's been a winner so far, but might end up being a big loser for you. And do the Democrats have, a left-wing Mamdani dilemma, if you like? First, you, Simon. What about the Democrats?
Look, people are voting for specific candidates. They're not voting for a generic brand or from people who represent a faraway place. And in the places where we have head-to-head polling with our candidate, our named candidate, and their named candidate, we are overperforming, as we've been overperforming in elections throughout the last year and a half all across the country. Our candidates are performing at where we thought they would be, if the election has shifted 7, 9, 10 points from 2024. And the best evidence of that is in all these Senate races in the heartland. And so, what we see in the polling is that, they're not voting for DSA or even the Democratic brand. They're voting for individual candidates. We've got great candidates this cycle who are doing a great job. And it's why one of the reasons I think there's so much confidence on the Democratic side that, as Sarah mentioned, as the shooting starts and the money starts flowing and the ads start flying, right? We've got great candidates who we think will prevail during this rough period that's about to come.
But Simon, in the same way that the Democrats will try to tarnish every Republican with a Trump brush, surely the Republicans will try and tarnish every Democrat with with a kind of democratic socialist far left-wing brush. I mean, that's just
but
the way
there's a difference
works.
Because the Republicans all voted for this agenda. And they supported it. They took affirmative action to support all of these damaging policies. These are fringe candidates, often in distant parts of the U.S., that have no bearing whatsoever on these individual candidates in these races. But it means that we need to be out there telling our story and having our candidates be aggressive on offense, not waiting and holding, but engaging now to get out before the negative ads come. And I think that when you look at the candidates, our candidates, and I've interviewed every single competitive House and Senate candidate in the country in the last few months, these are people of virtue who've been part of the community. They're going to be able to withstand these attacks because people know that it's not who they are. And so I think that there's a little bit of a desperation now on the Republican side, believing that some statement by some wacky DSA person in New York City is going to have any impact on our candidates in Iowa, Alaska, and other places. I just think it's wish casting at this point.
But I think in both your cases, both in the Democrats and the Republicans, certainly for those of us watching from the other side of a very large ocean, the impression we get, and we have a similar problem in the UK, by the way, and so do other European parties as well, the soul of your party has gone missing. We're not quite sure where it resides. Is the soul of the Republican Party, Donald Trump? Or is it any number of Republican candidates out there who, kind of like Trump and are now moving away from him because they find themselves more in the kind of solid center of politics? The same way with the Democrats. I know what you're against, Simon. I'm not quite sure if I know what you're for. Who'd like to take that one first?
I'll take it first. So Donald Trump came in to the Republican Party. He is mega. The Republican Party of old still exists. It exists within the Republican Main Street Partnership. Trump has the mega base. Right now, they vote Republican. A lot of times they don't vote at all. We'll have to see when Donald Trump exits stage right, if the mega still votes Republican, if they still turn out. But the Republican Party as a whole is still very much the party it has been for years, which is represented with 101 members within the Republican Main Street Partnership. And I have to agree with Simon. Unfortunately, as Republicans and Democrats butt heads, it is with some of the finest Republican members that I know, which is very unfortunate. These men and women are also running back home, and people back home know them, like them. They're talking about issues back home, similar to what Simon said about the candidates they're running against them. So I always hate it when it's the Republican Main Street Partnership seats that they're most vulnerable, because really they are the best members. They want to get things done. They often actually work with the Democrats to move the agenda forward.
But in the case of, I'll get to you in a minute, Simon, but just in the case of, for instance, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who are long-standing Republican mainstream, but voted with Trump, 95% of the time. This guy was thrown under the bus by Donald Trump in such a way that you might actually lose your Senate seat in Texas, one of the two. I mean, that's self-inflicted harm, isn't it?
That is self-inflicted harm, and it's very unfortunate. I would still say it's Texas. So as much as the Democrats may have a chance, it is still Texas.
But why risk it? Why even roll those dice?
I cannot answer that question because I don't know the answer to that question.
You're putting her on the spot, Matt.
Right. I certainly wouldn't have done that. But I do not run the White House. I run the Republican Main Street Partnership.
Yeah.
So.
Right. But I mean, that's a case in point, isn't it? Where, at the end of the day, you're putting all your eggs into the Trump basket. And many people argue he's not really a Republican. I mean, he's very transactional, and very Machiavellian and very opportunistic. So you might, the whole party might be, well, not the whole party, but many people in it might be sacrificed for the sake of one guy who is not, may not even care whether he loses the midterm elections or not.
I think he does care. I really do think he wants to keep the majority. There's 2 more years of agenda he'd like to finish. He does not want to be impeached every single day. Though we have had some self-inflicted wounds. The Texas one is point in fact. However, I do think whether the Democrats want to hear this or not, I do think we hold the Texas seat.
Okay, so talking about self-inflicted wounds, Graham Plattner, he's got a lot of publicity. This is the guy in Maine, the good old boy who ran the oyster farm. Turns out he was he's been accused of rape. He put some incredibly, I mean, politically incorrect doesn't do it justice. I mean, just awful stuff out there on social media. How on earth does a candidate who's handpicked to be the voice of the people get past the vetting with all that baggage in his past? That is, you might lose Maine and therefore the majority in the Senate as a result of that mistake.
Yeah, what's interesting is, first of all, I don't know that he was going to win because of all that baggage and having won the primary, which is how our system works. So this is actually, what's happened is actually probably the only way we could have flipped the Maine seat after he won the primary, which is that he withdrew. We created a process under Maine law to pick a new nominee, Troy Jackson. And in the very first poll taken, he's up by 3 points, before he even became the nominee. So, we have a chance there. I don't think we had a chance with Plattner as the candidate. So this is actually
really?
Worked in. Yeah, I absolutely, because of all the baggage.
No, but even before that, Plattner on paper without the baggage was a man of the people. He spoke like a kind of country music singer. He had an oyster farm. I mean, the main spirit of independent voting. But
elections don't happen on paper, right? They happen in the real world.
But a lot of the vetting happens on paper, doesn't it?
Well, no, and he wasn't vetted, and the campaign were, serially lied and gaslit everybody about what had happened in his past, and so. The Democratic Party, I mean, when you talk about sort of is the Democratic Party strong, we just did sort of a miraculous thing, which is we picked a new nominee within 3 weeks. There's legitimacy to the process. No one's challenging it. And we have a consensus candidate who's got a real shot at winning there. We didn't have that 6 weeks ago. And so I think we came out of that strong. And I agree with Sarah. I think that the other race to watch in the next week is the Michigan Senate race. I think the party is starting rallying behind Representative Haley Stevens, and I still think it's more likely that she prevails in that race than not. And if she does, I think we'll win. And so, look, the House should flip towards us based on where polling is today, and the Senate
by how
is
many
up
do you
for
think?
grabs.
What do you think the majority might be?
I'll just take. I don't care how much it is. I just want to be in the majority. I mean, maybe 10, 20 seats. Who knows?
That's
it depends
generous.
on. But it depends. Let me say that Look, I think if I can make one last point is that as bad as things are for the Republicans now, they're actually likely to get worse. And the reason why is that you're seeing with the war not being able to end, inflation is, gas prices are going back up again. The perception of Trump now having failed in the war, we're seeing some polling data showing additional erosion for him in the last few days. And the Democrats last week had our strongest, what's called generic ballot, which is, are you going to vote Democrat or Republican? We had our strongest run of generic ballot polling that we've had the entire election cycle. There is some evidence that things are eroding because of the resumption of the war, the increased gas prices, inflation going back up. And you're going to also have, and this is really important, is that in September, October in the United States, people start getting their premiums for health insurance. They get notified, and everyone is going, virtually everyone in America is going to see their premiums go up right before the election. Even in private insurance plans, there's going to be significant increases because of the Republicans' cuts to healthcare. And so it's my view that as you push towards the election, the conditions are going to worsen for the Republicans. And traditionally in America, as you get closer to the election, things break even further against the incumbent party. And so it's likely that as bad as things are now, they're likely to get worse for the Republicans between now and November.
I mean, Sarah, I have to say, you look at the laundry list of things that Trump has done and how they're playing with the electorate that was promised certain things. I mean, this is, talking of self-inflicted harm, this is on another level. He started a war that no one in America was asking for. I mean, hardly anyone. And the people that were asking for it are now upset it's not finished business. One of them is being buried this week, Lindsey Graham. But, so he's upset people on all sides as far as the war's concerned. Inflation is not coming down. Affordability is still a problem. And he's actually said publicly he doesn't give a damn about that. I mean, this is terrible. I mean, if you had to invent a candidate who was as sneering about the issues that ordinary Americans care about, you'd invent what we've got. But the guy's called Donald Trump. So how are you going to get around that problem, Sarah?
First of all, we have a lot more districts than we had in 2018 that are gerrymandered. So I don't agree with Simon that it's going to be 10 or 20 seats. I think the House is within 5 seats either way, to be honest. We are going to pick up seats that, in Texas and other places, hopefully North Carolina. So, yeah, with the redistricting, the seats are gerrymandered now. They weren't as much in 2018. There were more.
That's not a positive thing, is it? I mean,
members.
gerrymandering is that's a form of cheating, isn't it? Are you proud of cheating, Sarah?
It passed.
I know it passed.
The states supported it. I live in Virginia. It did not happen in Virginia, but states supported it. So I don't think there's as many vulnerable seats as there have been in the past. That's why I think it's a very small swing either way. But yes, President Trump, you don't have to love him, but we do have great candidates in these seats. They're talking about issues that are really affecting back home. I mean, the no taxes on overtime, no taxes on tips. I mean, these are issues that are really affecting men and women's pocketbooks back.
Well, I mean, I remember the no taxes on tips thing worked wonderfully well in the last presidential election in the great state of Nevada. Fantastic idea. But fine if you don't have to pay taxes on tips. But if your gas bill has gone up because of a war in Iran by $2 a gallon or whatever, or $1.50, that's bad news, isn't it?
So what we're seeing in our polling, which obviously our polling is going to be different than Simon's polling, is if people understand we're trying to prevent a nuclear weapon in Iran and all-out war in the Middle East, they support this. The problem we have is in the beginning, it was not explained why we were doing this, why we're in Iran.
Yes, it does help with the war to explain to people why you're doing it. I mean, I'm sorry. We had this whole thing here in Britain with Iraq.
Well, but can you imagine if we came out of this with real peace in the Middle East? The war would dramatically have changed the entire world, not just the United States.
Yeah, but we're talking about the midterms in November, not the next millennium. I mean, we might be waiting quite a long time before we get peace in the Middle East.
We may or may not be. We'll have to wait and see how this all plays out. But that's the key. That's why we went into this war.
Yeah, it's another roll of the dice, Sarah, that wasn't called, it wasn't necessary. I mean, it depends who you talk to. I mean, there are some people like...
Depends on who you talk with.
Exactly. So right. Lindsey Graham would say it's absolutely necessary. The Israeli public thought it was necessary. Now they're upset that the thing's unfinished business. But getting back to you, Simon, I've been giving Sarah quite a hard time. Now it's your turn. The point, though, is that even though Donald Trump has created one self-inflicted wound after another and is his own worst enemy, the Democrats are not polling well. I mean, you're not reaping the benefits from what should be, in the spirit of the season, an open goal.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on which question that you make that determination. And I know that when you look at our favorability, it's not as high as we would want it to be, because in part there are Democrats who are disappointed that we're not fighting hard enough with Trump. But when those voters are asked to vote, there is high intensity, that these are people that are turning out at very high levels for us against Trump, because the thing that's driving our politics, and has really been the thing driving our politics since 2018, has been fear and opposition to MAGA. And right now, that is the thing that's driving our election. And Democratic intensity is much higher than Republican intensity. Yesterday, the Washington Post had a story saying from a Republican that there's scary levels of disinterest now among Republican voters in recent polling. And as I said earlier, in measures like party ID, like which party are you a member of, the Gallup, we have one of the highest numbers we've had in the last 20 years in the Gallup poll, meaning that people are affirmatively identifying as a Democrat. And then also in the generic ballot question, which, has been probably a little bit smaller than we would have wanted. We saw last week anyway, it's starting to really open up. Now, whether that's a broader trend, we'll see. It could have been a blip because of the resumption of the war. But certainly in all the major polls last week, it was between +7 and +11 for us, which is, would be a rout in November if those were true. So, I think it's clear that people want an alternative and they're giving us a shot. And now we have to execute against that opportunity.
Right. But I just wonder what your polling was telling you before the last presidential election, because I heard some of the stuff that you're roughly the same that you're saying right now before the election in 2024 and Trump won. So I just wonder whether you're have the signals changed? Is there a possibility you're getting the wrong signals or you're reading them in the wrong way?
No. Look, in the last election, the 8 major forecasters, 7 of them had, Kamala Harris winning. It was the consensus of the crowd, but a close election. Everyone said this was going to be a close election. I said it was going to be a close election. It was within margin of error in polling. This election is not within margin of error. It's a very different thing. And so, but again, we recognize that we can't take anything for granted, and the Republicans have more money than we do, and we've got to work as hard as we can. But we are buoyed by the fact that we've had lots of elections over the last year and a half in the United States, and there's been a consistent overperformance when voters go vote, not when pollsters ask questions about party identification or anything else. We've continued to overperform expectations and Republicans have continued to underperform. That is likely what is to happen in November. And again, the House is only 3 seats, right? We don't have to do anything spectacular to win the House. The Senate is the thing that's creating, I think, the great is making us encouraged. The fact that the Senate's even in play was something that we didn't really think was possible a year ago. We're playing on their playing field, and we're just working as hard as we can. And by the way, in Texas, new poll out today has Tallarico up 5 points in Texas. I think all these races, these Senate races, are very close. They're all within margin of error. They could all break either way. And I just think we're very happy and pleased to be competitive in this many races this late in the cycle.
Just quickly on the funding, I'm amazed that the Democrats are being underfunded compared to the Republicans by such a big margin. There are plenty of very wealthy Democrats who absolutely hate Donald Trump and the Republican Party, who are normally very happy to open their coffers for you. Why have they kept them closed?
I think there's 2 things. One is we are raising a lot of money. It's just the Republicans are raising a lot more. And I would chalk that up to corruption and the pressure that Trump is putting on his oligarchs in corporate America to pay up for access and for.
We'll get Sarah to respond to that in a minute.
I know, it's okay. The reason things have fundamentally changed is because Trump has created a pay-to-play system that is bringing in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars as the most corrupt political leader in American history. And that is the engine of their money. Because if you look at the candidates, we are dramatically outraising and outspending. Our candidates are raising much more than Republican candidates.
Okay. Sarah, respond to that. Corruption, grift, oligarchy, I would add Banana Republic.
So here at Republican Main Street Partnership, we are getting the most money we've ever gotten from small dollar. They're $20 contributions, $1 contributions. So the American people, the average American person, is starting to fund Main Street more than ever.
Is that really true?
Money.
What's the balance between money from big donors and money from small donors? Actual numbers.
To be honest, the small donors are starting to pass the big donors in our PAC. We're now looking at a $4 million PAC. We at 1.6 of it is the big, corporate PACs. The rest of it is small dollar.
But that's not what's happening out with candidates in the election. We need to be very clear about that. That's not what's happening in races all across the country. Democrats are
what's certainly happening in the men and women's races, the Republican Main Street Partnership. They're getting a lot of grassroots money.
Sorry to interrupt. Does money even matter that much? You don't. I remember Mitt Romney, raised a ton of money. but he didn't prevail because he was not a very good candidate. I mean, is money still that important when people aren't watching, when they're not watching television advertising?
Money is very important because you have to get your message out. But candidates are still extremely important. And we feel we've got the best candidates in some of these really tough Republican seats. But my question is, the DNC is a mess. I mean, I'd rather be the NRCC than the DNC. I mean, your leader, very questionable. I have no idea what he's doing. I think that benefits the Republicans substantially.
Okay, why the mess, Simon? I think you're agreeing, aren't you?
Well, the DNC has actually raised more money this cycle than it did at this point in 2018, a comparable cycle in when we had lost the presidency. It's just that we're spending it in building up state parties and coordinated campaigns and in all the elections that we've had. And so I think the story about the cash on hand is only part of the story at the DNC. Ken Martin's actually raised a lot of money. There's no question that things have not gone perfectly there. I'm not going to dispute that. But I think that I think the DNC took a different tack this time, which is that Ken was elected chair to build up our party apparatus all around the country, which had been neglected for a long time. We've seen real obvious benefit from that. Like we just saw in Maine, you had a strong party that was able to manage a complicated process successfully. So we'll see what happens on election day. I think he's been very smart in the investments that he's made. I think we all wish we had a little bit more money, but we're raising money at the clip we've normally raised money. It's just that the Republicans have raised much more.
But Simon, doesn't the problem get back to the, what I tried to allude to earlier on in the podcast, which is that fundamentally, you've got an identity crisis in your party. You don't know whether your party is represented by Chuck Schumer or by Zoran Mamdani. I mean, the most successful Democrat has been the mayor of New York, who ran as an unabashed democratic socialist, and Muslim, and said, if you don't like that, suck it up. He won. He's managed to influence two key races in New York with candidates of his ilk, outflanking the ones from the center. And the established Democratic Party, the party of Obama and Clinton and all these kind of aging senators, is the party of the past. And you haven't embraced the new Democratic Party, whereas the Republicans, they're either afraid of Donald Trump or they're supporting Donald Trump. But it's still the party of Trump, for better or for worse.
Yeah, and where I'll agree with you is that we're definitely moving into a new era, an era, post-Obama, post.
But what does that mean?
No, it means that a new. Let me explain. I mean, I agree with you that we're entering. There's a generational wheel turning in our party, and that a new party's being born. I don't think we yet know what that party is going to look like, our presidential.
We don't know the gender of the child. We don't know the name of the child. Who is this mystery child that's being born?
Let me finish. I think a lot of this is going to get litigated in our presidential primary over the next 2 years. However, we have competed in hundreds and hundreds of races all around the country over the last few years, and since Trump won in 2024. Almost all of those candidates are what you would be considered to be establishment Democratic candidates. The success of the DSA has been in a handful of races. It's being wildly exaggerated, in my view, in terms of the impact it really has on the day-to-day. We have 45 candidates for the House and the Senate that are going to be the make or break the majority. None of them are DSA aligned, and none of them are even progressive at this point on the left wing of the party. So I think this has been a little bit exaggerated. However, where I agree with you is that there is a spirited debate happening. And I welcome that debate. I mean, we didn't win the last election. We have to be open to new ideas and new tactics and new strategies. And we shouldn't be scared of internal debates like the one that we're having right now.
Would you like to see more, Zoran Mamdani style? I'm mentioning him because he's the one that people know in this country, in our country. Would you like to see more of his style of politics across the board in America? Or is he sui generis for New York and that's where it should stay?
I'm from New York, and I was born in New York. My parents grew up there, and were immigrants. My families were immigrants to New York. New York is not like the rest of the country, and we shouldn't exaggerate this. But I think, look, he's brought a lot of energy. He's been a successful mayor, and again, I think it's a sign of health in a party that there's a rainbow, that there are different views, there are different people. We're a big country. And we should welcome this kind of diversity of viewpoints and not run from it. I'm not scared of the mayor, but I also think his politics doesn't work in Iowa and Ohio and Alaska. And even though the Republicans are going to try to claim that those candidates are more like those candidates in New York. They aren't. And let's see what happens in the election. I'm pretty confident that we're going to prevail where we need to prevail to win in November.
Sarah, the one question I hear more than any other in the UK about American politics regarding the midterms is, will there actually be midterm elections, or will Trump try and cancel them?
There will be midterm elections. I mean, that's just a bunch of hype. Absolutely, there's going to be a midterm. And my hope is there's more candidates like Bernie Sanders and the mayor of New York than the old type Republican or the old type of Democrats. I mean, I welcome Colorado. You got a socialist now who won a primary in Colorado. I think that the Democrats are having their Tea Party movement, which the Republican Party went through a few years ago. And I think it's really going to hurt them. You got a lot of socialists breathing in the air, taking up the space that the Chuck Schumer is used to take up. And I'm really concerned for the Democrats. I'm thrilled for the Republicans on the Michigan Senate race. That could decide the United States Senate.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Sarah Chamberlain, Simon Rosenberg, thank you very much to both of you. That's it for Trumpworld. We'll see you again. I hope you enjoyed it.